Welcome back to another episode of Piano Mastery Unlocked. I'm your host, Ronald Hawkins, and today we'll be diving into a piece that proves music doesn't need to be flashy or complex to be deeply moving. We're talking about one of Chopin's most dauntingly beautiful works, the Prelude in E minor, Opus 28, number 4. Before we dive into the notes and techniques, let's talk about the context. Chopin composed this piece as part of his set of 24 preludes, each one exploring a different key. The E minor prelude stands out for its emotional weight and simplicity. Chopin once described his preludes as sketches, small pieces that evoke a particular mood or feeling, and this prelude is no exception. It's often said to express profound sorrow, but the simplicity is what makes it so effective. It's a lesson of subtlety and restraint. Now let's break down what's happening musically. This piece opens with a descending bass line in the left hand. While the right hand sings out a sorrowful, repetitive melody. Chopin doesn't rush through this. In fact, there's a deliberate stillness in how the harmonies evolve. The limited texture focuses us as pianists to think carefully about how we balance each note. This is the heart of the piece: minimalism and emotional nuance. Here's what I like to ask myself: how can we express deep emotion with so little? The repetition of the aching melody is key. The more it repeats, the more tension builds, especially with Chopin's use of chromaticism in the harmony. For pianists working on this piece, there are three primary areas I focus on when teaching: tone, phrasing, and dynamics. Let's start with tone. Even though this piece doesn't demand virtuosic fingerwork, it does require impeccable control. The melody in the right hand needs to sing. It can't just be played like any other note. So try to think of this as a vocalist would. Shape each note and make it expressive, not mechanical. Next up, phrasing. The challenge here is not just to play the notes, but to breathe life into each phrase. Chopin has this way of giving us phrases that feel like questions, almost incomplete thoughts. It's our job to make the journey interesting. Finally, dynamics. Chopin leaves a lot of room for interpretation. The left hand must remain soft, providing support for the right hand without becoming too intrusive. As the piece develops, especially towards the climax, build your dynamics subtly. Don't rush into the forte too soon. It's the restraint that makes the louder moments so powerful. I often get asked about rubato in Chopin's music. The E minor prelude offers a perfect opportunity to explore this. Chopin loved rubato, and it's important to remember that rubato isn't about being reckless with the tempo. It's about breathing with the music. In this piece, the melody and the bass line move together, but the melody can stretch slightly without pulling the left hand out of sync. This subtle push and pull gives this piece its emotional depth. Experiment with holding the high points of the melody just a touch longer before resolving them. Now let's talk about the heart-wrenching climax. Around 2/3 of the way through, Chopin builds the tension, introducing dissonance and pushing us towards a brief but powerful forte. Here's where the emotional impact really hits. If you've paced your dynamics well, this moment feels inevitable. Then, just as quickly, Chopin brings us back down. This piece ends in such a quiet, unresolved way. There's no grand resolution, just a return to the introspective mood we started with. It's like the sadness remains unresolved, hanging in the air. Before we wrap up, here are a few final tips for anyone working on this prelude. Number 1, slow practice. Don't rush through learning this piece. Practice it slowly, focusing on the balance between your hands and the shape of each phrase. Number 2, experiment with the dynamics. The score leaves a lot of room for personal interpretation. Find the dynamics that resonate with you and make sure they evolve gradually throughout the piece. Number 3, listen and reflect. This piece is as much about interpretation as it is about technique. Record yourself, listen back, and ask yourself, am I telling the story I want to tell? What emotions am I conveying? Chopin's Prelude in E minor may be simple on the surface, but its depth is endless. It's one of those pieces that sticks with you long after the last note fades away. I hope that you find this piece as emotionally rewarding to play as I do. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Piano Mastery Unlocked. Be sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the repertoire, and if you're practicing this piece, I'd love to hear about your experience. Until next time, keep practicing, keep growing, and keep the music alive. I'm Ronald Hawkins. Take care.